Hi everyone, welcome to the second episode of the Bharat Varta podcast, where we bring you a commentary on politics, policy, and culture focused on India. So I have Ashish, Harsh, and Rohit with me, and we're going to be discussing a few nuances on the Delhi governance structure. So Delhi has been in the news of late, for unfortunate reasons. So we're going to delve a little deeper into what the underlying issues could be in terms of governance and so on and so forth, right? So just to give you a brief context on this, Ashish, would you like to set the context in terms of what we're going to talk about?
Yeah, sure, Roshan. So, see, Delhi used to have like a legislative assembly type structure till the early mid 50s, after which it became a union territory. It lasted like that for almost 4 decades. In 1993, as we know, the Delhi region was given like a special status, union territory with an assembly, and that's when the state government was formed. I mean, state being it's like a semi-state, and since then there have been there was a BJP government. There were three Congress governments, and then there have been two AAP governments. Two and a 49-day AAP government. So the structure is it's actually a three-level structure. There are certain functions which are with the central government. The state has got certain powers, and then there are municipal corporations. So from 2011 onwards, there are like three major municipal corporations: North, South, East, and then there's also the New Delhi Municipal Council. And there's also the legacy of the Union Territory days, where there are bodies like Delhi Development Authority. So it's a fairly complex governance structure, like a three-layer, where the central government retains a lot of functions, most critically including policing. But there have been the certain powers have been devolved to the state government, which would otherwise fall between like municipal bodies in other states. So it's like the state government as a large municipal body in itself, while the three municipal bodies are doing like really the lowest level of tasks in the governance hierarchy.
Yeah, so Rohit, you want to step in and add something to that?
Yeah, so just to give some political context to this, what basically happened in the 50s, which is why they sort of changed, why the then Congress government changed the system, was as a lot of us know, Delhi was one of the first places where actually the Jan Sangh took a very strong route on account of the whole refugee population that had come in from Pakistan, who were one of the Jan Sangh's earliest supporters. And that was something that sort of triggered the Congress government then to reduce the power of Delhi as a state, etc., and make it into a full-fledged union territory. Of course, things have evolved over the last 50, 60 years, and Delhi probably is not Delhi clearly is not anymore a stronghold of the BJP / the Jan Sangh. But that was one of the main reasons why the Congress sort of removed the power from Delhi at that point of time. And this whole pushing and pulling between the municipality, the state government, the central government relies on one basic fact, which is that the central government always wants to have law and order power in the state capital. I mean, in the national capital. And at the same time, you don't want people in the national capital to feel that they don't have as much votes as they have as people anywhere else. Like, you don't want to sort of disenfranchise them. So this balance is something that almost all federal systems have a problem addressing, and that's something which is at the root of a lot of this confusion in Delhi's governance.
Okay, any examples of how this plays out? I mean, in today's context. I mean, Harsh, do you want to take that?
Sure. So we can thank you so much for this conversation. We can think of the United States first. For example, DC does not send anybody to the US Senate. I need to check whether it sends anybody to the House. Does it send anybody to the House? I don't think there is any seats from the House as well. Yeah, so there is not a classical representation in the lower seat of parliament in the US as well. So Washington DC is a classic case, and even places like Ottawa and Australian Capital Territory, this is a broader conversation that the big capitals of these countries are actually not big cities. In India, obviously, that's not the case. In India, the Delhi urban region is now comfortably the largest urban region of India. So to Rohit's point, you cannot actually, there is a need for a balance, more so in India, where you need some kind of local representation and enfranchisement of these people. But you also need some special arrangement given that the national capital is there. So how do you kind of square the circle is the question, and for various political reasons, historically, as one example Rohit gave of cutting Jansangh down to size and then later on changing it in the 90s once again, as Ashish talked about. But there are also, I think, let's look at it from first principles, if you don't mind. What are we trying to achieve here? One, we're trying to achieve local representation. B, we are trying to make sure that the national capital is run in a way that is suitable for the capital as well as the country. Now, Delhi has 2-3 parts, right? One is what you could say Lutyens' Delhi, where all these big ministerial bungalows, bureaucrat bungalows, a lot of these national and quasi-national organizations are there. The parliament is there, Supreme Court is there, the executive is there. See, that part of the city to be actually under any kind of Delhi government does not make any sense to me. So one way to maybe approach this problem is to, if we kind of geographically break down Delhi into 2 or 3 parts, and then perhaps have a more logical conversation. So I would say, if you just look at the core political capital territory, which is Lutyens and the entire parliamentary and executive setup, and maybe you throw in one railway station and one airport. It need not be the big airport. It might even be Indore and Ghaziabad across the state, across the river, technically in UP actually. So once that region is there, actually that region can be somehow cloistered off from this popular sovereignty model. And the rest of Delhi could, at some point, even be given policing law and order and be a more of a conventional state, even though it would be more like a donut shaped, unique kind of state, as opposed to what normal geographical configurations look like. So the problem is, we have 2-3 places together. There's no way any rational government would give policing to a local government where all these central institutions are there. And once again, after the latest riots, you heard Kejriwal say in a very self-righteous indignation manner that, if I had the police, I would have done this. And Corona, but he's what his famous people tell about him. He basically said this time, "Kariye na is bar, kuch kar kyun nahi rahe." So it's a very convenient excuse to have. And there is also the element of real estate, and what if, for example, right now the government is in the very early stages of redesigning Lutyens. I'm sure some of you have seen the news. It's been trickling in for the last few months. They've gotten in some architects. Some of the early designs have been already panned on social media by people across the political spectrum. So it's very much a work in progress. But if you want to, for example, make the core region of India's largest city vertical, keeping in mind various security arrangements for the VVIPs, it is so difficult to go through the central government, a municipality. There's a municipality which is separate from the state government, right? So there are 3 to 4 layers. There's a DDA separately, and they're all there's so many agencies, alphabet soup of agencies without any clear accountability. Last point I'll make right now is the Chinese have something called municipalities, not to be confused with our municipalities. That's basically their version of national union urban territories, and basically it's Beijing, Tianjin, Shanghai, and one kind of quasi-city, quasi-province of Chongqing in southwest China. And they're directly, everything in China is directly controlled by Beijing, but they're more directly officially controlled, even though they have popular, strong mayors appointed by the Communist Party. So across a range of countries, there is this precedent, because in China, obviously, Beijing is covered, where the main city has a special arrangement, and this kind of democracy argument can be not sidestepped but tweaked. So one way to do it in Delhi would be to actually carve out the relevant area and let the rest of Delhi be, more of a normal state.
Okay. So, Harsh, I mean, you talked about how this whole question of access creates certain lobbies as well, right?
Yes.
Do you want to delve a little deeper on that, and maybe unravel a little bit about how they kind of work and how it hinders interest?
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, whoever is the lobby, they don't, write about it officially. This is what I'm lobbying about. In any case, in India, it's lobbying is illegal in India technically, unlike an official case street in DC. Anybody who's lived in Delhi or has tried to rent or buy, well, buying is expensive, but renting anything in central Delhi would often find out that the UBO, the ultimate beneficial owner of one of those Lutyens, one of the few Lutyens flats. Bungalows are obviously much more common, but they're often in a quasi patronage system. The ultimate beneficial owners of the few flats in that central region of Lutyens are invariably some politicians or bureaucrats. Now imagine if you have that kind of real estate, would you want a sudden inflow of real estate supply kind of crashing your price? I mean, the similar dynamics are at work in Mumbai as well. And so would you want that? And then you have an additional excuse here that, oh well, the core part of the largest city cannot grow vertically because of security reasons. Well, I mean, the many other cities in the world, including DC, they might not have massive towers right around White House, but they have a core part of the city which grows in a normal CBD fashion. So there is clearly a real estate lobby of various state actors, let's say politicians, bureaucrats, who have been stopping conventional real estate development, which is why, ironically, for such a large city, the main CBDs are in the edges, right? Gurgaon and Noida, so on and so forth. And even let's look at the development of the riverfront, like the Yamuna riverfront. It's absolutely atrocious. It's basically a few rural areas. There's actually some farming that is happening there. If you cross the D&D flyover, once the Shaheen Bagh nonsense is over, then when we can cross this thing, you can see it, right? I mean, and again, you can look at Shanghai, you can look at any other example. The riverfront is often one of the most beautiful and most productively and most densely used in occupied areas in terms of real estate development. There is a massive lobby which is directly, indirectly trying to prevent new supply of residential and commercial real estate, quoting the excuse of multiple authorities, just general lacuna of just inertia and status quo being there, and security being the all-encompassing excuse. So I would say basically, since a lot of black money in the last 2-3 decades have been parked in Delhi real estate, everybody's kind of comfortable, especially given the down market right now. Nobody wants new supply to come in. That's what I would say, and leave it at there for now.
Roshan, just one point from my side. So, while what Harsh spoke about, like a quasi state, even with its own policing powers, I think there's another dimension to consider here. With the politics, evolving the way it has evolved, and a lot of bickering in terms of all arms of states being politicized, including even judiciary or police forces, and of course, I mean the legislative controls, being devolved to the states. But one of the challenges that because the national capital, the way India has set it up, there's a whole bunch of central government employees also living in this region, right? So it's not just a Lutyens area where the politicians and the lawmakers live, the central lawmakers live. There's also an element of the workers in the central government departments and agencies and so on, right? The one challenge with devolving the police powers, and especially the way politics has evolved in the last 10 years in Delhi, is that this may actually lead to some kind of a vindictive type approach in terms of probing central government decisions by state government, right? So one challenge of devolving the police powers is that this can actually create a rift between central and state, which will be contrary to the federal spirit of the country. And the funny part is that actually all parties at some point have lobbied for police powers, right? So be it, Congress kind of, they never got there, but they also spoke about it. BJP also in 1993 had promised a full statehood to Delhi. So, parties, when they're out of power or when they want to mobilize the public opinion, they talk about unimpeded powers to the state government in the NCT. But the fact is that how this dynamic will actually play out on the ground, that's not very clear. And then, in fact, the things seem to be turning for the worse. So that's another point to consider, irrespective of how the management of Delhi evolves.
Yeah, I mean it's way too entrenched, right? So I mean I travel to Delhi, 3-4 times a year, and I see that there's this. Forget about people kind of imagine all the politicians and all of those guys having the power, but it's really the guys who specialize in, so to speak, getting things done, who really control the power there, right? And these are folks in in the government machinery or working outside of it, who would love to retain that status quo, right? So there's that old quote that says you never change things by fighting against the existing reality. So to change something, you have to build a new model that makes the old model obsolete or redundant. So moving on from this, right? So what do you think we can do with that regard, right? So do we move the capital out of Delhi? I mean, do we kind of have multiple centers, or anyone wants to take that? Rohit?
Yeah, so I think there are obviously two options, right? One is the option a lot of people float on Twitter, especially from time to time, they should change the capital itself. Now, and there are different arguments different people give for this. One argument I've seen is something like Delhi has just become a city that is just too corrupted at its core and represents something of an imperial tradition, etc., which is profoundly un-Indian, so as to speak. And just for that purpose, it should be moved out of the city, just to the capital should be moved out of Delhi just to have a fresh start. Another argument is to move the capital out of Delhi to sort of give a boost to whichever area the capital is being moved to. Now, whether this is central India or somewhere in the Gangetic Plains. So these are some of the examples that people have given. Now, if you look at it, Indonesia has tried to do a mixture of the two by moving the capital in from, as in they've announced it, to move the capital from Jakarta to somewhere on Borneo, both to reduce overcrowding as well as sort of give a boost to Borneo, which is one of the more underdeveloped parts of Indonesia. So that's one argument. The other thing is, how do you, if that's not possible, and there are very good reasons why a lot of people might have problems with it, starting from the sheer cost of this exercise. If that is not possible, the other option is to see what can be done to change the system. And I think one thing that I would look at is just reducing the size of this national capital territory. I was just looking it up. For instance, Washington DC has an area of around 180 square kilometers, while the NCT of Delhi has an area of more than 1,800 square kilometers, which is really big for just a capital. And a lot of the area in Delhi, if you see, including some of the areas where the riots happened recently, or some of the areas on the Haryana border, etc., they have nothing to do with the federal capital. They're just there in the NCT for whatever reason. And is that something that one should look at, of making Delhi into a full union territory, at the same time sort of adding on some of these outer areas of Delhi to their respective states, with which a lot of these places actually do share things in common. I mean, if you've been to some of the parts of Delhi bordering Haryana, you definitely see that the culture is broadly the same, and this border is just there for whatever reason. So that's something that can be considered. Either people are looking to exploring the idea of trying to solve this issue.
Okay, so let's consider the former option, right? Moving the capital out of Delhi. So I want to do a quick poll around the table and figure, what are some of your ideas. I'm partial to Bangalore, but I know you guys won't share that sentiment with me. But yeah, so Rohit, you want to take that? Where do you think we should move the capital, if at all we end up moving the capital?
Actually going to end up moving the capital, then we should probably do something in central India, just because it's just in the center of the country. If you want to actually do something new, then as well start from a place which is geographically this thing. I mean, some of the central cities like Indore or Bhopal or Nagpur or Jabalpur, probably the old central provinces are the best look for this.
Ashish won't disagree with your options, right? Ashish, Indore, the next capital?
No, Roshan, and to the contrary, why would I wish ill for any city in central India? See, it's the moment you move the capital, all the problems of Delhi will be inherited by the new city. If we have to, I would consider two options. One is we should just construct a new capital altogether, like a new city. That could be one option, and of course, somewhere in center would then make sense. Or another way to look at it is that potentially some of the specific functions of the government can be more decentralized, right? So maybe we can have the technology type stuff running out of Bangalore, both for policy and for implementation. More the trade and commerce type stuff running out of Mumbai. So we could devolve some of it, because anyway the ministers or the legislative arm only meets actually like 4-5 times a year, right? The two budget sessions, and there's a winter and the monsoon sessions of the parliament. So the actual legislative functions are fairly clubbed in a time period. So the rest of the machinery can still work out of other places for rest of the year. So making it more decentralized by functions could be an option as well.
Yeah, so I'm going to come back to the larger point of, what is the purpose of a capital at all, right? Aside from the fact that it's kind of like an assembly point for all of the government officials. No, I was coming to you, Harsh. So where do you think the next capital should be, right? I mean, is it Bangalore or is it Indore?
No, so I have actually written about it. I have written about it in Swarajya that we have to move it basically either to Bihar or Eastern UP. So that article I think I wrote 3-4 years ago on let's have a new Pataliputra basically. And if you look at Bihar, especially northern western Bihar and eastern UP, they are literally the poorest parts of the country, and they're also the densest parts of the country. So there are a lot of districts here which have population densities approaching 2,000 people per square kilometer. Which is more than the greater New York metropolitan area. So what is the as Rohit kind of mentioned in a different context, there's a lot of expenditure, right? So that's actually part of the point. The reason why the Delhi region and with the spillovers Haryana is doing very well is because the capital is there. Delhi has become a dry port, so to speak, a dry entrepot, because the capital is there and they received so much funding for infrastructure. And if we want the missing metropolitan area in India, if you look at the map and the population densities, is basically in eastern UP, right? So that we have metropolitan cities in Delhi, Bangalore, Chennai, Bombay, to some extent Calcutta, Hyderabad, Pune, maybe Ahmedabad, but even Lucknow is still much of a minnow. And that part on the eastern really needs one big metropolitan area. It need not be, for example, in any like Ashish said, it need not be an existing city, although there is not much empty land in that area, unlike say Madhya Pradesh. But it could be a new city somewhere between Gorakhpur, Kashi, and Patna, in that triangle. And I think it's that city really you'll anyways have to invest massively in the urban infrastructure of that region. And beyond the point, doing it through finance commissions will always bring up problems of southern states complaining, western states complaining about redistribution, so on and so forth, federalism. But if you just move the capital there, then that whole argument dies down. And very briefly about what Rohit said, as I said earlier, right, the national capital territory in India is too big. What Rohit was saying, so you can actually just take off that relevant area, Lutyens, and as Ashish rightly mentioned, not just the politicians, but also these employee societies. And the rest can be this kind of normal, quote unquote, normal state, which is in a donut shape around it. So if you don't have to move from Delhi, in that case, that's one way of, since very much quarantining the problem, so to speak. That's the flavor of the day.
Okay, you want to come back to that point that I made about, what is really the purpose of a capital at all? I mean, so Ashish suggested, kind of devolving the powers of the capital, so to speak. So have like a software technology hub in Bangalore, have the commerce industry hub in Bombay.
I agree. I mean, so obviously technology is changing, right? And we have people who are talking more and more about being networked and this and that. Already, SEBI and RBI, for example, sit in Mumbai, right? SEBI and RBI are not in Delhi; they're already in Mumbai. Already a lot of the interesting stuff in terms of the entire data superstructure are already being done in Bangalore. For UPI and this and that stuff. So yes, there is a broader argument to be made that why do you necessarily have to be in one city per se? But I think the judiciary, the national legislature, and the national executive, they do have to basically sit in one place, because a lot of communication happens, like in any corporation, it happens informally, it happens over the water cooler, so to speak, and not everything can be put in minutes and recorded, so on and so forth. So I think at the end of the day, you still need one capital city, but more and more stuff can be devolved, which already is happening to some extent. But you still need one capital city.
Okay, yeah, I mean, fair enough, I guess. And we're coming to the end of the podcast, right? And we've talked about, what the complications are with respect to Delhi's governance and what are the possible solutions that we could consider, right? Do you want to end with some examples of how this has happened, elsewhere in the world? Rohit, you want to take some examples, maybe London, Washington that you covered earlier?
Yeah, so I think one example I would want to bring in here is actually Malaysia, which is sort of similar structure to ours in the sense that it's a federal state, post-colonial, so as to speak. And I was just checking today how they, made Kuala Lumpur into a federal city. It actually happened in response to two things. One was how the central government, that is the party that was ruling the country, they actually lost power in the state where Kuala Lumpur was situated. And this, because of the heavily racialized politics of Malaysia, actually led to some sort of race riots also in Kuala Lumpur. So their solution was within 5 years, they just sort of convinced that state to hand over Selangor, to hand over Kuala Lumpur and make it into a federal city. But again, it's just the city. Then they later sort of saw issues with Kuala Lumpur being so big, and some of the other issues we've seen with which we've discussed just now with Delhi, and actually made a new capital again in Selangor and called it also a federal territory, which is their current capital. So sort of that's one example where, some of these problems actually have been seen and handled. Obviously, Malaysia does things in a slightly different manner due to it literally being a one-party state for most of its time. But that's something that we can see. Indonesia, as I mentioned, is another example where they're trying to move the capital with a clear economic rationale as well as depopulation, which ties in with some of what Harsh was saying.
Okay. Ashish, you want to step in and talk about London?
Yeah, sure. So London has a very interesting situation. So they have like a city council type of an arrangement where part of the election is direct and part of it is like a proportional representation type election from a set of candidates from the parties. And this council has got fairly wide-ranging powers in terms of managing, say, transportation or the city laws, or I think law and order to some extent. So while we adopted the British means or ways of governance, the British themselves have gone the other route in terms of devolving more to the city. In terms of the civic management or the urban management, that seems to work pretty well. But I think the main issue of discussion is law and order, and I think even in London we see that in the last 5 years that has become a bit of a concern. I mean, similar to what Rohit was talking about in Malaysia, where there's a conflict between the local view of the politics versus the local view, the city view of the politics, right? And I think, London almost behaves now as a separate country of its own. There were even suggestions during Brexit that, why can't London stay more open, etc. Right? So, we would call that secession in the Indian parlance, in the Indian political idiom. So, London seems to have gone the other way around of devolution of powers, while a lot of the countries which had British governance initially are trying to abstract that into a more central government driven capital system.
Okay. Harsh, any final thoughts? I mean, do you want to quote some examples or anything that you want to end on?
Yes, I would perhaps mention the example of Brasilia. So Brasilia is a city which was created in the 50s and 60s out of absolutely thin air, and the rationale was that if you are Brazil, all the major cities like Rio and Sao Paulo are all on the coast, right? Historically, all major cities are actually on the coast or on a navigable river. And the idea was, Brazil has, 8 million square kilometers. It's a massive country, and the entire interior was quote unquote unexploited. So to press that forward, and now it's the third largest city in Brazil. The federal district has it's going to touch 5 million in population. And so something similar needs to be understood in India. See, in India, Delhi was the capital of an empire which is historically more east-west in orientation. So let's say what is now Pakistan, Afghanistan to Bangladesh, the Mughal Empire, or even earlier the Gupta Empire. Actually, South India and the Deccan the extreme south was always short. So we need definitely a more north-south orientation in the capital. So to that extent, Rohit and Ashish's point makes a lot of sense. Also, the Yamuna and Ganga rivers were navigable, and a lot of trade used to happen there. But now, because of canals and other reasons, the dredging, it's not actually that navigable anymore. So we are in a unique situation where our massive population away from both the sea and navigable rivers, and we have to therefore artificially pump up infrastructure until at least maybe the rivers get navigable. Something like Nitin Gadkari is talking about, it will take time. Therefore, I think Brasilia is a good example of how to deliberately go to a hinterland interior and try to prop up. So, but overall, I think even if that doesn't happen, like we've spoken on Delhi, we can at least quarantine the problem and make the rest of the large state a normal state. But the core needs to be more centralized, not more decentralized. That's how I would end it. Yes.
Okay, thanks so much for joining me on a Sunday morning, guys. This was a super insightful conversation, at least for me. Got to understand a lot of nuances in and around the governance structure and stuff like that. So thank you, everyone, whoever is listening. This is the second episode of the Bharat Varta podcast, where we covered a few nuances on the Delhi's governance model and some solutions and alternates on that. The podcast will be available on Anchor.fm, Spotify, Pocket Casts, and possibly YouTube as well. The Twitter handle is Bharat Varta, so that is BHARATVARTA. And a bunch of us will tweet the links out as well. So hopefully you can join us next week and listen into this kind of ongoing conversation on politics, policy, and culture. Thank you so much. See you, everyone. Bye-bye.